Genetic.
Discrimination.
The good. The bad.
And the ugly.
So what is genetic testing and what is genetic discrimination? I will be presenting to you about those two questions. So what is genetic testing? Genetic testing is the sequencing of human DNA in order to discover genetic differences, anomalies, or mutations that may prove pathological. So you gather your DNA from your hair or your skin and you send it to testing where the scientists professionally check your DNA cell sequence to compare with the healthy cells and look for any anomalies or unusual things. So when the scientists look at your cell sequencing, they can find a lot of genetic mutations that you may have. Huntington's disease is one of them. Cells are like chains, but instead of chains, they are called codons. When there are 35 or less codons, you're okay. But if you have 40 or more codons, you have a high chance of having Huntington's disease that may make cute Mike Wazowski become something like this near the age of 40. So let's say that Mike Wazowski marries Celia, his girlfriend in the movie Monsters, Inc. After their honeymoon and going through a lot, they get a baby. She's cute and adorable, and she looks just like Mike and Celia. They take care of her a lot, but one day, your company makes you take a genetic test, and the results tell you that you're Huntington's positive. It doesn't have to be Mike though, it can be Celia or both of them. Anyways, if the parents have Huntington's disease, then there's a 50% chance that the kids has Huntington's disease as well. So you don't want to make babies without thinking of the consequences and what they have to go through. So it's a good idea to take genetic testings. So now that we know what genetic testing is, we go on to the next topic, genetic discrimination. What is genetic discrimination? The normal plain discrimination is alienating people because of their appearance, age, or sex. Just like this. Sully looks at Mike and says, "Oh my god, you have green skin. Ah, that's nasty." This is normal discrimination. Then genetic discrimination is the same thing, but it's about genetic status. Again, this is an example. Sully looks at Mike, who has Huntington's disease, and says, "Oh my god, ill, you have genetic disease, get away from me." This may not seem too bad to you, but this happens in real life, and they are much worse. To get into an insurance company, you have to sign contracts and pay money monthly or yearly or something. So if the insurance company thinks you will die soon, or if they think you will not bring a profit to them, but make them bankrupt instead, then you may not be accepted. Here's an example. Mike is asking the insurance company person, Sully in this case, to get insurance. Sully says sure and hands him a sheet to fill in. Name, Mike Wazowski, birth, November 16th, age 40, and so on. When Mike hands this filled sheet back to Sully, he says, "Oh Lord." Then says, "Thanks for having interest in our insurance, but we cannot accept you." Mike asks why, but Sully just says no. What actually happened is that on the sheet, Mike wrote his mother had Huntington's disease. So Sully judged that Mike will not bring his company money or profit, and thus he rejected him. Even if you give him your genetic testing sheet that says you are Huntington's negative, they may not accept you because genetic testing are not 100% accurate. Thus, this is an example of genetic discrimination in real life.
So the pros of genetic testing. Positive things about genetic testing are the person that is getting tested will be noted that they have any diseases, for example, Huntington, or like a lot of diseases. So, and if you know it when you're in the early ages, you get to get like treated, so then it won't be as bad as like people that didn't get genetic tested when they were young. And second thing is that if you test it when you don't have a baby yet and you're thinking about having a baby, you will know like if your baby will, as I said, you will know if your child has inherited your disease that you have. And the genetic testing does not hurt any person. You won't know nothing to be scared. You're just knowing that if you have any disease or not. So I think it's a good thing to have a testing when you are young. So then you'll know what you'll be like in the future. And it's good to know if you have your disease. So then you could think about the future, how you're gonna live, or like if you're gonna have a baby or not, or if you're gonna adopt a baby, or like, get treated as soon as possible. And that's about like pros of all the genetic testing.
The cons of genetic testing, Sar Shabagani. First of all, the limitations. Despite having several benefits, there's also limitations of genetic testing that need to be acknowledged. First of all, there hasn't been enough development in the genetic field for the results to be 100% accurate. And also, one may have a mutation in his or her genome during the test, but may never get the disease. One's parents may have a disease, but the child is tested negative. However, in the future, the child still may be diagnosed with the disease. And lastly, one may have a genome mutation, but goes completely undetected during the test. During a genetic test, a patient donates their saliva sample in a test tube. This is then taken in the research lab and performed a DNA test on. And then the doctors then know the whole chromosomes of individual and whether or not there's any abnormalities, and can predict whether or not in the future this person will have a genetic disorder such as Huntington's. My next point is false security. Now, people may develop a false sense of security due to the test results. And if one isn't counseled about the accuracy of genetic testing, they may be led to believe that they have no risk of a disease. And this is a false hope, since genetic test results do not rule the possibility of getting a disease. So, for example, an old lady gets a genetic test to find out whether or not she has any genetic disorders. And when the results show up, it's proven that she has no genetic disorders. However, she still needs to be counseled by the doctor about the accuracy of the genetic test, as the patient still may develop the disease even though it was tested negative in the genetic test. Now, to provide an example, Minion A and Minion B both are married, and both of them have breast and ovarian cancer. Both of them have a child, which is Minion X. So Minion X gets tested for the breast cancer genes of BRCA1 and BRCA2, which are the most common genes creating breast or ovarian cancer. The results are proven negative, so Minion X is relieved to not have breast and ovarian cancer. But later on, in 4 years, she's diagnosed with the disease and is heartbroken. So as seen in this example, patients can be heartbroken because of the false security they've been living in. Now, the genetic discrimination. There have been laws placed in countries prohibiting any form of healthcare discrimination, but still people are worried that it still may happen. Insurance companies may not provide insurance to people prone to certain genetic mutations, or employers may not hire employees with a possibility of getting a genetic disease. So as an example, Gru and Vector both look for a job. When they submit their resumes to the employer, both of them perform a genetic test. In the results, it is found that Vector has an alcoholic gene, and therefore he does not get the job, whereas Gru gets the job, because he's perceived to not have any genetic mutations. This is an example of genetic discrimination at the workplace.
Genetic discrimination. Why is it good? Where does it take place? It takes places in in a workplace, as you can see with the bus manta from the Pixar movie Finding Nemo, and in sperm banks, where their children are artificially produced. So, what's the difference between genetic discrimination and regular discrimination? Of course, in a normal workplace, there's always discrimination, but instead of calling it discrimination, it's called differentiation or distinguishing someone. So, I mean, you know the difference between Gil and the other fish in the fish tank at the dentist. They're in the same situation, but of course, Gil is more distinguished than those other fish. Now, would you hire the turtle seen here, or would you hire Gil? The answer is obviously Gil, since he is more capable in most jobs. And by genetically discriminating or differentiating people, as I think we should call it from now on, it can save money for companies, and it can save children's lives, because if an adult were to donate sperm and then it's later found out that they carried a genetic disease, it's very likely that their children would also have that disease later on in life. The example given here is that Nemo, when he was in college, decided to donate sperm to a bank. Of course, his child, he later discovered that he had a genetic disease such as Huntington's, and his child, who grew up and discovered that he also had Huntington's, is very sad, as you can see here.
Why is it bad? Genetic testing can not only be used to help but also to harm. Just because someone has hereditary cells or cells that show that the person might develop a disease does not mean that the person will absolutely develop the disease. There are several types of examples, including employment discrimination and insurance discrimination. It is not only something that can help you with your medical life, but also something that can socially categorize you in groups of your own similar genetics. Let's say Buzz Lightyear needs a health insurance, but obviously Buzz's mom had the Huntington's disease, and Zurg's family has a history of the disease as well. He is denied from the insurance. Buzz is left crying. He is in great health condition at the moment, so there was no reason for the company to deny him insurance. But last year he just broke his arm. Now he has to pay a lot of money when going to the clinic near his house. Look at his sad face. Employment discrimination. If Buzz Lightyear's mother had Huntington's disease, he will also have 50% chance of inheriting it. The Space Ranger Committee recently did the official genetic testing. When his boss finds out that his mother had the disease, Buzz is not a Space Ranger anymore. The testing leads him to be immediately kicked out. Although there are several laws for corporates to prevent discrimination regarding people's jobs, lots of big companies do it anyways. This leads to the person who is fired to be low on money, which leads them to having more problems. Now Buzz Lightyear has no job, even though he was one of the most effective Rangers in the Ranger Company. All living things have genes. Every living thing can be near to some disease, and genetic discrimination is unfair because it is only selecting some people, even though everyone has bad genes. Bullseye probably is near to some kind of disease. So is Buzz Lightyear, Woody, Huggy Bear, and Woody's girlfriend. Getting rejected from health insurance or fired from your job because your ancestors had some defect and you may have cells of that defect can be heartbreaking. People can get bankrupt or even lose homes because of discrimination. Imagine what Woody the sheriff's fate would be like if he was banned from the sheriff community.
Thank you. Bye.
Ishan Singhi,
Rio Mochizuki,
Saharsha Bagani.
Leon Araya.
And Lucas Sandoval.
See ya.